Good morning, everyone. Just a little thing. We've just got a bit of a problem with the Toyota Corolla LRJ65 that's just blocking the access up to the grassy parking area out here. So if you could, if that's your car, would you like to just move it somewhere else? Thank you. I think the person is dealing with it. Do you want your phone, John? Thanks, mate. Well, good morning, everyone, and great to have you with us this morning. If you're looking for some seats, there's some seats up the front here a bit more, some over the side here. Yeah, you're welcome to come and join us there. Well, thanks for coming to a time to celebrate Dad's life and remember his life. And no doubt we'll hear some interesting stories and some funny stories, and we'll all probably learn a few things that we didn't know about Dad. I just wanted to acknowledge friends and family that have come from Australia, and also friends and family that have come from the North Island and the lower part of the South Island. It's great to have you with us. Unfortunately, our oldest brother Brent is unable to be here today. He's been really sick the last couple of days, and he was still really sick last night, so unfortunately he won't be with us. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you need the toilets, you just go through the doors at the back here, and they're on your left. In the event of an emergency, just make your way to the emergency exit at the back here, and we'll just meet out on the field, another exit here, and we'll meet up on the back, but not that that's going to happen today. Well, most of you will know that Dad had a pretty tough last 18 months. It was pretty tough going, being sick. He had 13 weeks in hospital, a couple of doses of COVID, lots of troubles with his gallbladder, and then ended up having to have a permanent drain in his gallbladder. He couldn't have his gallbladder out because of other health complications. So. And then he ended up immobile and unable to weight bear in hospital level care. And I was a bit worried. A number of years ago, Mary and I went to a parenting course, and some of you will remember Ian Grant, and he said, sort of a bit tongue-in-cheek, but he said, treat your children well because they're the ones that choose your rest home. And I was thinking of more of my children choosing a rest home if I needed that, or hospital level care, not thinking I'd have to do that for my father. And wasn't an easy situation. But I went to Stillwater, and there was 2 rooms, and there's one that looked over a courtyard, and I thought Dad would hate that. It was all concrete. The other one looked out to the Richmond Hills here, and I thought Dad always loved the hills, and he did appreciate having a room that looked up to the hills. So I was pleased that I made the right decision. Dad was born in Nelson Hospital the 26th of October 1935 to his parents Connie and Ron. And 2.5 years later, he was given a sibling. Brian came along, and they grew up in the Batten Valley on the family farm up there. It was quite remote back in those days, and the roads weren't as good as they are today. And Dad always talked to me about when he was 5, he had to go boarding with his grandparents, Lillian and Harry, over in Stanley Brook, and he said that was pretty tough. And his grandmother, Lily, she said she was a tough old Scottish woman, so he found it a bit hard. So he did that for 3 years, and then the school bus came up to Wangapeka, and Connie could drive them to Shirley and Alec Drummond's place, and they could catch the bus from there. And Dad always said in the winter time, the bus often wouldn't start. Sometimes they had frosts, about 22 really hard frosts in a row. And he said all the shady sides of the hills will be just like snow with frost. And the kids would all have to really push hard to get this bus going. And he said the buses were freezing. There's no heating in the bus back then. And it was tricky too, because it was really, you had to have a good reason to be able to get a new battery, because they were really in really short supply, so they just had to make do. I'm just going to ask Hugh to come up now and speak for some of the family. Just hold it up close to you now.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Hugh, second oldest, and this is my daughter Alexis. Today, as we remember Dad, it feels right to speak about something that meant so much to him, his half-bred sheep and the wool they produced. Dad didn't just keep sheep, he cared deeply for them. He loved the process, the land, and the quiet satisfaction that came from the honest work. He spent countless hours tending his ewes, watching them grow, and making sure that they were well looked after. To him, they weren't just animals, they were a reflection of his dedication, patience, and pride. Dad also put an incredible amount of time and effort into preparing the fleece for sale. It wasn't rushed work, it was careful, thoughtful, and done properly, because that's the way Dad did things. He believed that if there was something worth doing, it was worth doing right. Each fleece carried the result of his hard work, his knowledge and respect for what the land and the animals go back to him. Over the years, Dad had a whole collection of vehicles that carried us around the farm and up the batten. It started with the old green comma truck, which took us everywhere. Later, it had a big steel canopy on the back, so all us boys could fit in, along with the pig dogs and whatever else we needed for the day. Sometimes even bales of hay to feed the sheep. We had one dog who barked the entire way up there and all the way back. One day, Dad had decided to make a muzzle for him, but halfway there, the dog ate it and just kept barking anyway. When that truck finally gave up, we moved on to a comma panel van. Not quite as good as the old green truck, but it did the job. After that came the Series 2 Land Rover, which served us faithfully for quite a few years, doing the same endless trips backwards and forwards. In the 70s, we eventually ended up with a big Austin Lodestar truck, mostly used for carting hay and hauling the tractor and implements up the batten. That one eventually went west too and was replaced by a Morris truck. I'm not quite sure where that one ended up, but it served us well for a while, just like all the others and just like Dad did. A lot of that work was hard, practical, and very much done the old-fashioned way. Feeding out hay often meant going up the back hill on the Fordson Dexter, the transport tray loaded with 15 bales of hay, and one of us boys hanging onto the safety frame and standing on the back corner of the tray. We'd been told to jump off when the track became too steep. The front wheels lifted off the ground, and the wheel brake suddenly became the steering wheel. There wasn't much health and safety in those days, but somehow we all survived. I think it taught us to have quick reactions and to jump in the right direction. Making silage was always a busy time of the year. It had to be carefully teed up by phone, which usually meant nighttime calls because no one was ever near their phones during the day. Covering the pit had its moments too. 50 metres of cover, a bit of wind, and suddenly it made a very good sail. We were lucky that the wind died off just as before Dad and I left the ground. Cutting the silage was another job entirely. It was done with an old home-light chainsaw, then loaded onto the trailer by hand with a pitchfork and fed out the same way. You always knew when the chainsaw was going by the blue haze drifting up from the pit. That chainsaw is in the shed today, and there's someone in this room who will probably talk it into starting again. I think he knows who he is. Then along came the International B250 with a front-end loader and fine-cut silage, suddenly needing to cut needing the chainsaw to cut the silage, we didn't need it anymore. That job became a lot less physical, a sign of changing times, built on all the hard work that came before. There are so many hunting stories we could tell about Dad, but one that really sticks with me is the time he badly squashed his finger. It had gone completely black and he could barely hold anything with that hand. We were hunting out behind the terrace when the dog started bailing in a patch of scrub. Dad told me to wait by a stump, and he went in and shot it. Suddenly the dog stopped barking, and I could hear Dad yelling. It took me a moment to work out what he was saying. He wanted me to come and help. He was right in close, holding the pig by one leg, with no way to reach for his knife with his good hand. So once I finally understood what he needed, I got there quickly, and the pig was soon dispatched. It was classic Dad, injured, outnumbered, but still determined to get the job done. Through all this work and through these many shared moments, Dad showed us the value he lived by: commitment, perseverance, and quiet pride in a job done right. These are lessons that stay with us today, as his memory does. We will remember him in the paddocks, on the hills, and in the woolshed, in the simple, honest work he loved. And while he may no longer be with us, his legacy of care, his effort, and the life he built will always remain with us.
That was awesome. Thanks, Hugh. During the Second World War, labour was really short, so the kids got put to work and doing all sorts of jobs. And one of Dad's jobs, when they were shearing, he'd get sent by his father, Ron, to go and, he was only 5, to go and get the wood stove going up at the house. And sometimes Dad said he was a bit of a sucker for a good comic. And he'd get, Grandad would look up and think there's no smoke coming out of the chimney yet, and he'd know that Lloyd had got stuck into a comic. But anyway, eventually Dad would get his nose out of the comic and get the fire going so they could have lunch. The boys really did grow up free range. They'd come home from school when they were about 10 or 12, and they'd take the 22 and go shooting and do all sorts of things. And shooting rabbits and hares, and that sort of extended into using the 3.0 to shoot bigger game like pigs and deer. Dad said they often actually got sick of shooting things because they just had to do so much of it, otherwise the place would have been overrun by pigs and deer. And back in the day, if they went spotlighting at night, it wasn't really spotlighting because all they had was a 6-cell torch. Nothing like these LEDs today with their thousands of lumens and stuff. So he said you couldn't see too much, really. Just going to ask Autumn, would you like to come up now, please? If you're using the mic, just hold it up close to your mouth.
So kia ora everybody, my name is Autumn and I am Brent's youngest daughter. So as Ian said, he's unfortunately unwell, so wasn't able to make it today. So I've been reflecting about Grandad and my feelings about some things, and about how, like, with him there was such a sense of place and a connection to the land, but also really intrinsically linked into that was his history, and that's what we've heard a lot about today. And it was things like, we remember eating raspberries, which we used to always cover in icing sugar. Apparently they weren't quite sweet enough. And we'd also be talking to him at the same time about things like when him and Nana used to go to the raspberry dance together, which I just think is like the sweetest thing, that she came to come and pick raspberries, and that was part of their meeting story. I don't know if they were raspberry king and queen, but apparently they appointed them, and when you look at the photo at the back of the memorial service, I like to think that potentially they were. One of the things as well that we got through from Grandad, which we've heard a lot about today, is that love of nature and the land. And that is something that I know has come through, definitely through to all of me and my 3 sisters, and I think through to my other cousins as well. And he did that in a very quiet way, around sharing his love for the batten as well as the farm. And that was something as children we got to spend a lot of time feeding out, jumping in the hay shed, I know my sister Mihaela got told off a lot for mucking around in the wool shed, but it's very strong memories. And also he would share with us his stories about growing up in the valley. And it's quite hard to imagine, without power, but I imagine that it was both an idyllic and challenging time to grow up. He did seem to find fun, and a lot of the stories he told, there was definitely an element of cheekiness and naughtiness to it, which was very interesting. We feel very lucky that our children, so 9 grandchildren, great-grandchildren on our side, have had the time with their great-grandfather, and that we're able to pass on those values and love of the land through to them as well. So thank you, Grandad. We love you, and as you would say, cheerio.
Thanks, Autumn. Making hay when he was a young fella on the farm up the back in the day was one of his least favourite jobs. He said it was hot, dusty, they were using horses back then, and he said it was just a tedious job. They had to sew old super fertiliser bags together to make a cover to cover it, and back in the day they just made a big pile and had to cover it. So it was mostly just the hay was used for the house cow, the calves and the horses. I think he really appreciated modern day haymaking, where it's much more mechanical. He shore his first 30 sheep when he was 13, and they would have been quite big wethers, I think, back in the day, and Dad was quite pleased when his father gave him the option of shearing some more or going and doing another job, and he chose to go and do another job because he said his back was killing him. He told me a funny story of, because him and young Alec Drummond were cousins and they had neighbouring farms, and one day they were way up the hill somewhere, and the men had been splitting posts up there for fencing and stuff, and Dad and young Alec had been sent to find the wedges, the metal wedges that they'd been using for splitting, and they got a bit distracted. They'd found a good supplejack vine that they had a great time swinging out over the gully on the supplejack vine and having a great time. And then Alec Drummond Sr. came along and racked them up and told them they should be doing what they were sent for. Dad said, I don't think we ever did find the wedges, he said. Autumn just said about the raspberry picking, and Dad said they had a wonderful time doing all the dances and stuff, sometimes 2 or 3 a week, and it was a lot of fun. Just going to ask Paul to come up now, please.
Hi there. I'm Paul, and I'm the youngest and the spoilt one. In many ways, Lloyd was a tree of a man, taller than most, with trunks for legs and solid branches for arms. Lloyd named his first farm Kahikatea after a stand of tall trees on the farm. Today we're here to remember a man strong in determination, physicality, and opinion, with grit and hard work to match. Lloyd was a man of many passions. One of these was wood. Lloyd loved trees, whether it was planting them, chopping them down with a chainsaw, splitting posts out of birch logs in the bush, falling a rimu full of flooring in his house, or chopping up a crisp willow for firewood. I think he was actually always at his happiest either with a chainsaw in his hand or in his workshop shaping some timber into his latest design, which was usually in his head and rarely down on paper. Lloyd was also a master of making do with whatever resources he had on hand. A prime example of rural New Zealand number 8 wire creativity and determination. Growing up, as has been mentioned, in the baton during the war years had taught him at an early age to make the best out of whatever was at hand. Anyway, back to his love of wood. Lloyd was a farmer, but he was also a builder. He was always building something. And here's a list: 4 sets of sheep yards, 2 cattle yards, 2 plunge sheep dips, 2 shearing sheds, or is that 3 because he dismantled one and rebuilt it again? 2 killing sheds, 5 hay sheds, 3 implement sheds, 2 pump sheds, a bulk fertiliser bin on the airstrip, a massive concrete silage pit, as Hughes mentioned, which was about 50 metres long, and a workshop, and he also co-built his house with Peter Bonington, the builder. And I believe, other than the house, I think all of these were built without the use of a skill saw or detailed plans. He loved the sound of a sharp handsaw biting through the wood, following a pencil line traced from a square. On another note, when I was a young boy, Lloyd taught me, or should I say, Dad taught me about swearing. Swearing was fascinating. If a tractor wouldn't start on a cold morning, a small bit of tinkering and a fair amount of swearing, and it was sure to start. If a sheepdog was heading the sheep the wrong way, then swearing, accompanied by frantic arm actions, usually did the trick. I did notice, though, that when Lloyd watched the 6 o'clock news, if there was something he didn't agree with, swearing at the TV made no difference at all. Back to the building. He built the hut in the batten in the 70s, and later in the 1980s, he built the top hut. I remember it well. He built the hut in 5 or 6 sections and got Jim Crook, Dion, who's here today, his dad, to fly it up in the helicopter, each section. And then he got a flight up on the last load, and Jim left with the helicopter. That's really when the fun started. We then proceeded to rapidly reassemble the hut, pitch a roof, and get the iron on by dark, blissfully unaware that none of us had a torch. Thankfully, in a box of gear, there was a small oil lantern, one of those old oil lanterns, not a kerosene lantern, just a cheap little oil lantern he'd bought. And that was enough to guide us on the 45-minute walk out. And the lantern was, well, it wasn't like this, but it was similar. And what I want to turn this on today and say, Lloyd, your light hasn't gone out. It lives in your sons. It lives in your grandchildren who are here, and it lives in your great-grandchildren. Your determination, your grit, your thirst for knowledge, and strength of opinion is evident in us all. Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Paul. That was awesome. Well, Mum came and she picked raspberries 3 years in a row, so I think there must have been something pretty significant that attracted her back every season. And I think her and Dad met the first time she came down here, and Mum picked berries up at Warnes's up at Tadmore Valley there, and they used to do their washing in the river and swim in the river, and Mum really enjoyed the adventure. And so Mum and Dad got, I think it was 1937, they got married up in Waiuku. It's funny they got married up in Waiuku because when I rang Dad and told him that Mary and I are getting married in Gore, he said, "Gore? What the hell did you want to get married in Gore for?" Mum and Dad both loved fishing, and Mum had grown up doing a lot of fishing at Obra Bay and that. And there's a couple of pictures there with Dad with a good snapper or two. I'm just going to ask Joel to come up and talk. This is my son Joel.
Hey, yeah, no, he definitely had a good run, getting to keep farming to the very end, basically, and definitely got good use out of that Kawasaki mule. And, yeah, and, he stayed very connected to everyone. He was always calling just about everyone he could, really, every evening. And I think, it kept him in all our lives, and he loved hearing about the stories and always sharing some old story with you, even if you'd heard it before. It was always good to have a chat. But, and I think everyone's kind of highlighted that, well, he really gave us an opportunity to kind of connect with nature and farming, hunting, fishing, all those things he found special and thought were quite important for kind of, becoming a decent person and enjoying this country we live in. So I think that's really special, and that's kind of his legacy he's given to us, and I think we always kind of appreciate that and keep spreading that in our lives. But it was definitely always funny going to do some work with him. Like I remember making a lot of firewood one summer and thinking we've got more than enough that should last him for the rest of his time. But he saw another willow branch kind of hanging down low, and he had the chainsaw and only had a ladder that was on pretty sketchy ground. So he got me to hold it, and I was like, "You sure this is all good?" He's like, "Yep, I've been to university and got my QBE. We should be right." So what's that? Qualified by experience. And then he cut this thing down. And that didn't take him out, and that was only, maybe 7 years ago, so still old and pretty nimble up the ladder and that kind of thing. He's doing it right to the end. And yeah, I think it's, awesome and just giving us a place to, another thing for us connecting to nature, and that was, he'd make us build birdhouses, and then you sort of go and hammer this birdhouse he built with him, and you've learned a bit of woodworking, and you get to come back in a few months and see if there's any birds in there, and I think that made it all quite special and made us build some little boats out of sort of wood, and he'd help us do that, and then we'd float them down the river, and it was just sort of a cool way to kind of explore the world. And thank you very much for that, Grandad.
Thanks, Joel. My kids were fortunate to have two grandparents, and my dad was they referred to Dad. He was either farm granddad or fish and chip granddad, because when he came, he'd buy fish and chips. So that was and their other granddad was bus granddad, because they travelled around in a bus for a while. Just going to ask Megan to come up. Megan is Lloyd's niece.
Hi. I've just got a wee memory that came to me this morning, and those that know will know because they've all been in the same boat as me. So we used to have meals around the big table, and I once got put right next to Lloyd, and sitting there quite happily with my arms on the table, whack goes the carving knife, and I'm kind of going, What's going on? I'm only 10. What are you doing to me? Anyway, I didn't cotton on that it was the elbows that were in trouble. So I put them back there again, and whack came the carving knife. Okay, I'm a slow learner, but I learnt real quick. That's not where you put your elbows when you're at Uncle's house. We had lots of fun with the cousins, being cousins, as you do. There's so many memories of a great man. And I think now that Uncle Lloyd's gone, a part of my dad's gone again, because I spent a lot of time with Uncle just so that I had the connection to my dad. And we'd discuss things, and it didn't have to be anything great. It was just sitting yakking. We'd always toot when we went past the farm, on the way up to Kaharo or wherever we were going, or we'd call in on the motorbike and, catch up with him. So yeah, now that he's now passed, another part of us, our link to that past has gone with him. So travel safe, Uncle. I'm going to miss you. There's a big hole left. We all valued your perspective on life, and it's been great having those last few weeks with you, catching up.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, I remember when Dad used to do that, whack people's elbows. I was so embarrassed. It was because I knew what was going to happen. We're just going to have a hymn now, and Dad chose this hymn, and I think we're not going to sing it, we're just going to sit and listen to it. But it kind of reflects Dad's relationship with God, and he wanted to play this hymn, and the words are really awesome. And I think the first line is, "Oh, the place where I worship is the wide open spaces," and that was Dad. He loved the wide open spaces. So we're just going to play that now, and just the words are on the service sheet there. You can sing if you like, or just read them as the music plays.
Place where I worship is a wide open spaces built by the hand of the Lord. All the trees of the forest are like pipes of an organ where the wind plays and mountains are altars of God. Oh, the place where I worship is the wide open spaces built by the hand of the Lord. There's a carpet of green and a sky blue roof above. You're welcome there alone, or with the one you love. In your heart, take a good look. If you follow the good book, you're sure to find your reward. Oh, the place where I worship is a wide open spaces built by the hand of the Lord. There's a carpet of green and a sky blue roof above. You're welcome there alone, or with the one you love. In your heart, take a good look. If you follow the good book, you're sure to find your reward. Oh, the place where I worship is a wide open spaces built by the hand of the Lord. Built by the hand of the Lord.
I'd never heard that hymn before, but I really liked the words to it, so that was for you, Dad. You know, Dad was 88, and he used to do a few submissions to the council and different things, and he was 88, and he did his last submission, and it was all about their cat policy. And he had made a comment in the submission about let's stop pussyfooting around, and it ended up being the headline in the paper. And it was after he'd come out of hospital, and he was still really sick. He said, "No, I'm going to go and speak to the submission." I said, "Dad, you're too sick. You can't do it. You'll have to find another way." And he was a bit annoyed with me, But anyway, when I came back that evening, he said, "Oh, I've sorted it out. I've got Stewie Bryant who's going to go and speak for me. So thank you for doing that, Stewie. Dad really appreciated that." And I think there's some bit of work being done on the cat management. We're just going to have a reading by Mia. Mia's my daughter, Psalm 23.
The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Thanks, Mia. Dennis, would you like to come up and say a few words, please? We're just going to have a time of sort of open sharing, so if you do have something you'd like to share about Lloyd, we'd really love to hear it.
Thank you. I'm Dennis Mead. I come from Matariki and I moved into the area in 1978. And Lloyd was already in the area. The first time I ever met him or saw him was blowing the whistle in the sale yards, because in those times when you were auctioning stock, the auctioneer had so long and the whistle was blown, and that had to get a final price. And that was the first time. And the last time I met him, it was funny, it was mentioned here just before, I actually took him some raspberries, and it was about 10 days before he passed on, and he looked at them, and then he pressed this little button, and in a few moments, or a few minutes, a nurse came along and bought him some icing sugar and a teaspoon. So he still enjoyed his raspberries. He couldn't quite eat all of them, so he told me, being practical as ever, go and wash the spoon and come back and you can polish the rest. And then there are other things that he did do. He was right into the rivers. And one of the things that annoyed him intensely was the fact that how could a river be full of gravel and shingle and still be expected to flow decent water in a flood? And he felt very strongly about that, and he, many times when we were sitting having a whiskey, in which we did every night that he came on a Monday night, and I think it went on for nearly 27 years. He came on Monday nights, and all this happened after he lost his beloved wife, because my beloved wife, she said to me one day, what can we do for Lloyd? He's down there by himself. And I said, well, we could supply him with a couple of dogs, because we got him a couple of reasonably good pups. One of them, I think he christened Mead. And I think he was the one that used to sit at the top of at the woolshed there and shake hands with you if you went in. But he loved his stock. And of course, for me, I also love my stock and bred my own rams and had a stud. And so he understood all that. And therefore, we got along very well. He also thought of the future. He loved his forest, and so up the Clark, the trees that were left to grow were great, but he also did something else, and he thought of the future. And so he planted Douglas and redwood. He's the only man that I know that's planted Douglas and redwood, and looked on into the future. So even though he's gone, one day somebody will cut those trees down and think about the fella that perhaps planted them. So for me, yes, a friend is gone, a companion, somebody who is very genuine, and we had our ups and downs. He loved his wool, and with great delight, he would tell me that he got $13 a kilo, say, for a bale of hogget wool. And of course, I was only able to say I got about $3. So, yeah. For me, it's a friend, somebody who is, yeah. And I think some of you may know that in his passageway, he had a long, well, quite a wall full of empty whiskey bottles. And you would think that we were perhaps big drinkers, but we weren't. I don't ever remember Lloyd becoming tipsy or anything like that. He was very practical and quite restrained in what he did. And just once, in the whole time that I knew him, when I was faced with the prospect of losing my wife, he's told me how lonely and hard it had been when he lost his. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. And what you did for Dad was amazing. You know, for 20, I think it might have been even a bit more than 27 years that he went out every Monday night. You always knew where Dad was. He'd be up at Dennis and Trish's for dinner. And he was joined a few years later with when Viv's wife, Susan, died suddenly. So the two of them would go up to Dennis and Trish's for dinner on a Monday night. So really want to thank you for that, because that was a wonderful commitment to, it's not, seeing what Dad went through after Mum died and how hard it was and lonely suddenly being on your own. You're not going to have this great retirement with your partner, and you had all these plans to do things, and suddenly it changed. Mum and Dad always wanted to build a house on the property at Tapawera, and it was great that Dad went on with that plan to do that. And I always loved going back there and having that view up to Mount Arthur and the Twins was really beautiful, and down the valley. Mia's just going to come and share something.
I think I'm the second youngest granddaughter, but I just wanted to share a softer side of Granddad that I think some of us got, which was musical Granddad. So Granddad he absolutely adored musicals, and he would pick us all up and take us to the musicals every school holidays. And I still remember the commitment to that, because it reached a point where it was just me and Jessie that would go. And then Jessie, no longer musicals were cool, and it was just me that would go. And every school holidays, for I think about 3 years, me and Granddad would pick me up, we'd have fish and chips, and then we would go and watch the musicals together. But I just think for me that commitment went further, as the fact that he attended every single one of my musical choir performances every single time, no matter how average or great it was, he was there. And I just think for all of us, like grandchildren, he was always really excited and passionate about what we were doing. You'd always go and hear what your cousins were doing. So I think he just had a real commitment to what we were passionate about and what we wanted to achieve. So I really valued that.
Thank you, Mia. Anyone else like to have a story or something? I'm sure there's a few out there.
Hello, everybody. I'm Gordon Curnow, ex-Tapawera, and I'd known Lloyd for all my life, and I was aware of what a great guy he was. Yeah. First of all, we rode to school in the same old Butterbox school bus, which you can ride at the Higgins Park now. My grandson rode in that last summer. Anyhow, Lloyd, yeah, I saw him most times when I went out there. I worked out there, having worked for the council and the catchment board, and met up with them out there. I see Margaret Faulkner's here today too. Nice to see you, Margaret. What my memories of Lloyd really out there as a kid and growing up was how much he did for the community. And really hasn't been mentioned today until now, I think. Really, he did a hell of a lot for the community out there. AMP shows, he was always there putting the stuff up and pulling it down again, among other things. And that's a big memory I have of Lloyd. And he was always a friendly guy. When I went out, when you live down here, I always go to the Tapwera AMP show if I can, and meet up with all the locals out there still. So nice to meet him and have a chat with Lloyd every time I went out. Thanks, Lloyd. We'll miss you.
Thanks, Gordon. And funny enough, two of my children, Joel and Mia, actually had Gordon's wife as their teacher at Tahunanui Primary. So that's the little loop in the... Dad had a real booming voice. He had a really loud voice. You could hear him from a long way away. He didn't need a megaphone, wouldn't need a microphone. And I remember Mum used to, during the holidays, Mum would go picking raspberries because it's just a bit of a thing she quite enjoyed doing, and meeting a lot of different people. And anyway, she picked raspberries at Campbell's. And one day, Alistair sidled up to Mum, Eileen, and said, Eileen, sounds like Lloyd's having a bit of trouble shifting the sheep up on the hill there. And there's this all myriad of colourful language drifting across the valley, and as Lloyd was trying to shift the sheep. Mum got home that night. She said, I was so embarrassed when Alistair come and talked to me about Lloyd trying to shift the sheep and all this language drifting across the valley. Is there anyone else who would like to share anything? Yeah, come on, Bradley.
Yeah, I'm Bradley. I'm Dennis's grandson. I spent a bit of time with Lloyd when I was younger. And a couple of the stories, someone mentioned his mule. Well, my dog crashed it one day. So I was helping him, rolling up a flexi net, and he used to walk around with this big stick. And that was right, my dog was just cuddled up next to me. And all of a sudden he came along, the dog didn't need to be there, so he waved this thing, goes, get out of it, get out of it. And my dog thought, well, where am I going to go? So he goes and jumps in the mule. And I was like, oh, it's all right, it'll be all right. And all of a sudden the mule started taking off down the paddock, because he always left it in gear and he'd put the handbrake on. So there's me running down the paddock next to the blooming mule, and he's back there yelling. And I was like, oh my God, I am going to get killed. And luckily it broke all the wires in the fence bar one, and my dog climbed out and walked off. And then I was like, oh my God, Lloyd is going to do me. And he thought it was bloody hilarious. See, every time he rang me up, he always said, how's that big black fella going on? So he's all right. Have you got him driving lessons yet? No, not yet, Lloyd, not yet. And yeah, Lloyd he was good to me. He was quite funny. I remember one day I was working in the yards with him, and yeah, he had a big voice and he liked to use it. And he wanted me to catch this lamb, and so he comes up to me and goes, oh, my boy, you don't make a bad wee hen dog over there, the way you grab sheep. And I said, you wouldn't make too bad of a hunt away yourself with the noise you've got. But no, he always caught you out with what he'd do for you. Like, I remember one time I wanted to go to this party in Tapwera, and I wasn't allowed to drive down there, and my old man didn't want me to go. My granddad didn't want me to go, and Lloyd goes, you just give me a ring later on. So I gave him a ring, and he goes, righto, you come down, you stay at my place, I'll make you a bed, and you come down and scratch my ice. And I thought, I don't know about this, because I never really saw that side of Lloyd before. And sure enough, I tootle off down there and get there, and he goes, give me your keys. Go there, and he goes, breakfast will be at 8 o'clock, or whatever, get up, bacon and eggs in the morning. And it was bloody good. So yeah, cheers, Lloyd.
Thanks, Bradley. Dad loved a good yarn over the farm gate, and him and Brian Biggs had a few good yarns leaning on the farm gate and putting the world to right. And Ellen was telling me, they always love to have a good yarn for quite some time over the farm gate.
Good morning, folks. I'm Aaron Bajan. I met Lloyd when I was about 8, through my father, knowing his father. And progression of years and time, I speak on behalf now of, it was a mob profession game, which I'm the chairman. Lloyd was actually an honorary ranger for about 40 years, for which we have been eternally grateful. The longest serving honorary ranger in the district. Now, a little funny story. There was a big patch of maize growing up there on Stuart Bryant's place, and we got wind that there was a lot of pukekkas invading this, so Lloyd arranged that we would have a pukeka shoot around it. So a few of us got there, and we duly dealt with these pukekkas, and this parry flew across, and I started calling it, swung round, and my mate, who I won't name, because he's still a useful mate, he stepped out and shot it. And Lloyd yells out, "You buggers are putting me in a compromising position. I'm a bloody ranger, you know." So, Lloyd, for your services to the association, which started way back in the Acclimatisation Society, we thank you.
Thanks, Zoe. And Dad, your dad was really passionate about his trout fishing and duck shooting, and we've got a few things up here for display, so please do come and have a look later. We've got his duck caller, and even Dad always smoked a pipe as a kid. I always remember Dad, he always had a pipe in his mouth, always, continually, the whole time. So we did actually find an old pipe as we were cleaning out the house. Dennis alluded to Dad's involvement in the community with the sale yards, the Boys and Girls Agricultural Club, Domain Board, Federated Farmers, Meat and Wool Scouts, and he was very involved with the Hope Diversion Scheme, and also very involved with saving Donald Creek when the then Forest Service wanted to log the native bush up Donald Creek. And Dad was telling me, he said he thinks just about everyone in the community turned up at that meeting they had with the Forest Service up at Donald Creek. And through that there was a compromise reached, and Donald Creek bush was saved. So that was awesome. We always have a bit of a joke about it as a family, because Dad, if he was always racking the TDC up, and we always thought they probably have an alarm system that goes off on their phone system when Lloyd's number 0352243327 came up. It's him. But Dad, fair enough too, with seeing rates being wasted, and he was a stitch in time, saves 9 guys. The end of the bridge was getting washed out a bit, get some rock in there and fix it up, when it only cost a few thousand, rather than waiting until the next flood, and then it's 50,000 to fix it up. So if you're from the TDC, you can rest easy now. I don't think you'll be getting any more calls. We're just going to, Dad really wanted to, this is his choice, to have the hymn Amazing Grace. And it's a really cool hymn. It's probably one of the most well-sung hymns in the world. And I'm just going to share a little bit about this hymn. It's quite an incredible story of how a man by the name of John Newton's whole life was completely changed by God's grace. The powerful lyrics show how God's love can transform anyone's life. Newton was born in London in 1725. His mother taught him about the Bible and faith, and when he was young, but she died when he was only 7. His father, a sea captain, sent him to boarding school after remarrying. Newton's life took a dark turn as he joined the slave trade. He worked on slave ships and later became a captain. During this time, he was known for his bad behaviour. He drank heavily and used language that was so foul, even the hardened sailors were shocked. While sailing on his ship, the Greyhound, Newton faced a terrible storm in the North Atlantic. For over a week, the storm battered the ship, causing serious damage and leaving the crew hopeless. In his desperate moment, Newton began to think about his life and the need for God. He cried out for mercy. While reading the New Testament, he found Luke chapter 11, verse 13. And it says, "If you, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give the Holy Spirit to them that ask?" The verse spoke deeply to him, and Newton later wrote about this day as the moments God's amazing grace reached him. After leaving the slave trade and becoming a minister, Newton wrote Amazing Grace to share his faith journey. The lyrics tell of his redemption, forgiveness, and the life-changing power of faith in Jesus. When he wrote, "'Tis grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed." Newton was describing his journey from guilt to peace through God's love, mercy, and forgiveness. After finding faith, Newton fought against a slave trade. His work helped pass the Slave Trade Act in 1807, which ended slave trading in the British Empire. The hymn's message of hope reminds us that God's grace can reach and transform anyone, no matter how far they've strayed. And what an incredible story behind this well-sung hymn. I'm just wondering if we can all stand now. We're going to sing Amazing Grace, and it's to the bagpipes and drums. Dad really loved the bagpipes. I didn't really appreciate them when I was a teenager, but I like them now. And just to let you know, there's no real lead in, so we just go straight into the Amazing Grace. And Dad, this is for you, and let's give it our all. The words are on the order of service. Please be seated. That was for you, Dad, and I know it was a bit of a favourite of yours, that one. We've just got a slideshow we're going to show for Dad now. And we're going to leave it playing in the auditorium after the service, so if you want to come back in and watch it, please do so. It does go reasonably quickly, so we get through it. Doesn't take too long. Thank you. quite hard to condense 90 years into 8.5 minutes, but I think that was quite a good tribute for Dad. I found that a bit emotional at times. It was lovely as a father seeing the real gentler side of Dad with his grandchildren, and he really loved all you grandchildren and loved hearing what you're up to, loved the phone calls, and he'd often ring you quite often sometimes because Dad loved to talk on the phone. And so I think he had a really cool relationship with you all and the great-grandchildren. And it was really nice to see Dad really mellow a bit more as he got older, and that was lovely. Well, I'm just going to close in prayer. And Lord, we thank you for Dad's life, for the 90 years, the life him and Mum created in Tapawera. And we thank you for all those years and all the years we had him. So we just thank you for this time together today celebrating your Dad's life. And we just pray too for safe travels for everyone as they head home. One of Dad's last wishes was to have the Tapawera Area School fundraising group do the morning tea. So it's been great to have Joe and the team do that for Dad. And so if you'd like to join us just out through the door on my right here, out into the cafe, we'll have some refreshments. And there's so much more to Dad's life, and it's an opportunity to share some of those more stories. There's a lot more stories. There's so much more we could have shared. We'd be here all day. So it's a time to have a good yak over a cuppa and some food. And thank you for coming. Please come back in if you want to have another look through the slides display. It'll keep running. And we just did a bit of a display. Some of the things we found in Dad's house as we've been having a bit of a tidy up. John Wells, there's even a postcard to Dad and Brian from your dad, which we found. So I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, thank you very much for coming.